The gay marriage debate after a court ruling and continued challenge. Where will Michigan stand? Plus, it's 1 year on the job for Kevyn Orr. The reality of a minimum wage hike and bottoms up, more beer in Michigan. It's analysis of news across the state. MiWeek starts right now.
Michigan's turnaround is being powered by things we do better than anywhere else in the world. Today's global leaders routinely turn to Michigan to work on their most difficult problems. That's because the engineering talent in this part of the world is simply the best. So many possibilities lie ahead for Michigan's future. These opportunities are here and starting to happen. The vision for the new Michigan. Share it, talk it up, drive it home. Funding is also provided by Delta.
Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us for MiWeek tonight. I'm Christy McDonald. It is the big story that everyone has been talking about since the ruling, gay marriage in Michigan, and if our state is on the right side of history. Coming up tonight, the fate of 300 couples who married before the stay in this case, the governor's role, and how Michigan fits in with the rest of the country. Also coming up tonight for you, Emergency Manager Kevyn Orr's one-year report card and why he better move fast on a deal for the DIA. Plus, the push to raise the minimum wage is gaining steam here in Michigan. And bottoms up, you can expect more beer in Michigan. We'll explain that for you coming up. But we do start tonight with gay marriage in Michigan. Governor Rick Snyder has refused to wade into the debate. The Attorney General shows no sign of dropping an appeal. And the 300 men and women who got married just after the ruling are stuck with a technically legal marriage that means legally nothing in the state. Let's get started right here tonight. Nolan Finley is off tonight, so sitting in for him is Daniel Howes, a columnist for the Detroit News, and with us as always, Stephen Henderson from the Detroit Free Press. Gentlemen, it's good to see you. Daniel, thanks for joining us on MiWeek.
Thanks for having me.
All right, sitting in for Nolan tonight. So it has been a huge week, and I think the conversation which has happened at workplaces, which has happened around the kitchen table and talking about gay marriage in Michigan, and now we know a little bit more, Stephen, about the fate of those 300 couples who got married after the ruling before the stay. Should the governor have made a different decision? Legally, he said this is the legal decision that had to be made, but is there some kind of leadership role here for him in this case?
Well, I think he made the right legal choice. I mean, when you have a decision like this that overturns a constitutional amendment, the right thing to do is to stay it until the appeals courts can review that decision and decide whether it's right or wrong. I think I was looking to the governor to make some sort of moral or cultural statement about this, because I think that's the other significant part of this is a cultural shift in Michigan. I mean, just 10 years ago, people in this state voted overwhelmingly to say that we wouldn't have gay marriage in Michigan, and now things have changed sufficiently that I think you can't do that there is no legal basis for it anymore. And I think you want the elected leader of the state to say, here's how I feel about that, and here's what I think about it. And yeah, we're going to wait for the courts to decide ultimately what we have to do, but here's what this shift means, and here's what role I think I play in it.
I think, Daniel, the governor would say, well, I've never really commented on a lot of social issues, that I've been the strict economy guy. We can get into the argument about what the gay marriage stance here in Michigan does for Michigan's economy, but is it really his role to make a comment like this on a social issue?
You could argue that it's his role, but I think it's very much the role he's taken is very much his personality. This is a guy who tends to, because he doesn't want to get involved in those kinds of issues, he's going to sit back and wait for the legal issues to play out. This is also happening in an election year. This has potential electoral ramifications, I think. I don't think he wants to get too far out front of that and make a statement. Remember, this is a Republican governor. Republicans nationally have been very critical of the Obama administration for taking positions, and essentially the Attorney General saying you don't have to enforce laws if you don't agree with them. Republicans have been very critical of that, and I think this is one of these cases where people are asking him, like Steve's talking about, well, make a statement, make kind of a philosophical or moral statement irrespective of the law, and I don't think he's going to do that. That said, I think we know the direction that this is headed at some point, and And Michigan is probably, when this is all said and done, we're going to end up having a legalized gay marriage.
Could this end up hurting Governor Snyder, I think, Stephen, with those voters who voted for him in 2010, who were on the fence, those independents and those Democrats that came over to him, if he doesn't talk about this kind of issue, if he doesn't talk about and come out on one side or another of gay marriage?
Well, I think it could hurt him. I mean, I think, that's how he won, is that he got people who don't identify themselves as Republicans to vote for him. And I think if you were to ask those people today, they feel differently about gay marriage than they did 10 years ago. And so they're going to look to a candidate who's going to reflect, that thought. Mark Schauer's been super aggressive about this, by the way, emailing constantly to specifically those voters, those Democrats who sat home in 2010, those Democrats who crossed over to say, look, this is a difference between me and him. Schauer's out front saying, look, this has to happen. Snyder's being more cagey about it. That's politics, and it could matter.
I'd be very surprised if we get into a general election and the governor doesn't take a pro stance on this.
We've heard a lot, I think, in the last week that Michigan isn't on the right side of history. Daniel, what does Michigan look like in the grand scheme to the rest of the country? How do we fit in?
Well, it depends on what you mean by the wrong side of history. You mean on this issue?
Yeah, on this issue.
Yeah, I think increasingly, if you talk to business people, gay marriage and issues associated with that are important for business recruitment, and people want to go into communities that have what are perceived to have a greater sense of tolerance, and that can be an issue. And so how this ultimately plays out, I think, is going to be important economically for us. We've got a lot of things going on at the same time in the city of Detroit. A lot of cities and a lot of urban revitalization has also happened with the help of a gay community that is welcome and prospers. So I think that could be an issue. I think it's too soon to tell, really. It really depends upon how much political pushback there is. If we get a real furious kind of pushback and a rush here in the next little while to get something on the ballot for November, then I think you could be on the, quote, the wrong side, and because then it becomes very contentious. And it's the contention, I think, that is ultimately the problem. And the other risk is that this thing goes to a ballot and the people that are pushing it, it ends up potentially losing.
What is the possibility of getting something on the ballot?
Well, the Democrats kicked this around last fall along with minimum wage, and there was a third issue they were looking at that I can't remember offhand. And my thought was that they didn't do this because they didn't feel like it was a slam dunk. I mean, if you're the Democrats, you're looking for an issue that's going to bring your people out to the polls in a greater number than they did 4 years ago. I think they saw numbers that suggested that maybe this issue didn't do that as well as minimum wage. I think it's probably a little late now not to get the signatures, but to get the money together. I mean, ballot initiatives are expensive to campaign for, and they already got their eggs in the minimum wage basket, so I'm not sure we'll see that.
And it may not be a slam dunk, and it also could be a benefit to the Republicans because the opponents
would
be very motivated, which will amp up Republican turnout, which could have implications for the state house, the Senate, the governor,
That's right.
and congressional elections.
It's all tied together. Speaking about someone who is running for re-election, Bill Schuette, who is at the center of this as well. Going forward, what could Bill Schuette do right now? What are his choices, Stephen, and what would you like to see?
Well, I think he does not have an obligation to pursue this up the appeals chain. I think he had a constitutional duty to defend the state at the district court level. I mean, I think there's no question about that. But you don't have to push to the last opportunity the chance to run against a national legal tide. Judge Friedman's opinion about this was not some sort of novel concept. Everything he said in that ruling you can find in rulings from other state courts and from the Supreme Court about why you cannot single out gay people as a special class for discrimination. So the idea that you would fight that to the death, so to speak, just to make a point about defending our Constitution, even though it's very clear that our constitutional amendment is at great odds with with subsequent rulings. I think that's ridiculous, and I think he is doing that for political reasons and not matters of law.
Do you agree with that, Daniel? Because he would say, well, if I'm going to fight for the Constitution from day one, why wouldn't I follow it all the way through to the end?
Well, he's doing the same thing in the context of the Detroit bankruptcy and pension protections. He's arguing that he needs to protect those pensions, irrespective of the supremacy clause. And Steve and I could talk about that for a long time.
So do you think that he should stand down in the gay marriage debate?
Whether I think he should or he shouldn't, I don't know that he will.
He won't.
I don't think he will. I mean, I think this is a guy who's not only looking to be reelected as Attorney General, but wants to run for governor in 4 years. This is an continued attempt to shore up his base and not violate one of my personal laws, which is that is to give adversaries a club to beat me with. And I think he's trying to avoid that if he can.
Last word, Stephen. We have 300 couples who were married on that Saturday, and now they say, okay, so that was a legal marriage, but now you do not have any legal benefit. What is the future for them, and what can they expect in the next year?
They've got to wait for the appeals process to take place. I mean,
and I think many of them understood that was probably what was going to happen.
And that's not unusual. And that's not Bill Schuette's fault. That's not anyone's fault. That's the way our legal system works, right? A district court judge, a federal district court judge, does not get the last word on a matter like this. It's going to take some time to sort that out. Now, how hard should Schuette or the governor push this from the opposite side? I think that's a different question. But you were going to have this limbo one way or another. It's just a question of how long it lasts.
All right, moving on. Detroit's emergency manager Kevyn Orr marks 1 year on the job. He spoke a few times this week in the media and 2 policy forums about the goal of reform in the city. Bottom line, getting through the bankruptcy process to make Detroit livable for the residents.
From time to time, I'll drive around the city in the afternoon and see what it was. So 1 week the pile was there, the next week it was gone. The second week I came back when it was gone, the gentleman who owned the house across the street, and this is in the middle of winter, was out painting his shutters. So I stopped just to talk to him. I said, hey, how you doing? Oh, you're the guy on TV. I said, yeah, I'm that guy. I didn't know if he was going to, maybe he was going to hit me, whatever. He didn't like me so much. He came over and hugged me. And he said, thank you for taking that garbage up. The sense of civic pride in the fact that his neighborhood, just that little thing was moving, was causing him to invest in his community.
Orr is operating on a time frame, of course. His 18-month term is up in September. The question of the grand bargain to save art from the DIA and offset pension cuts is still out there, and time is running out to close that deal. Before we talk about that, the grand bargain, before we talk about now that he's asking for bids for privatization for the water department, I want you guys to give him a grade. Let's give him the 1-year report card grade. Daniel, what do you think?
I'd give him an A- to B+.
Oh, but it's so important to try to shift that. When you got a B+ in school, you're like, what's the one thing?
Kids in college would freak out. Kids in college all think they should get A's all the time.
They should.
What's the one thing I could have done to boost that up to an A-?
He didn't understand the politics of Detroit. He did not understand, and he when we interviewed him, I think a week ago or 10 days ago, he acknowledged that he did not appreciate how political this process was going to be and how confrontational it was going to be. The other thing that he acknowledged is that he spent a lot of time re-studying the problems that the governor and the Treasury Department had already done. And he said, I should have not spent that time. I should have just taken what they had done, because essentially his time confirmed what they had already done.
Right.
And he wasted time.
Did it surprise you that he didn't realize how political this process was? Because I think probably 25 people could have told him that. Or is it something that you have to wait until you are in that position before you can realize it?
I think you do have to. You have to understand it. And Detroit's political environment is in some ways very unique around the country.
Yeah.
And remember, this is a guy who spent 30-some years practicing law for a white shoe law firm at a very high level. This is not the kind of stuff that he did on a daily basis. He didn't do Chapter 9s. He hadn't been involved in this kind of stuff. He knew bankruptcy, and does know bankruptcy, and I think he knows what he's doing. But the politicization of the process, which to Steve and I is what we deal with every morning when we get out of bed.
Correct.
For a lot of people around the country, by the way, it is foreign, and it's very difficult for people to understand in this day and age that we're still fighting these battles with these kinds of tools, but that's what we're doing.
All right, give me the grade.
I think I'd go B plus, for the same reasons. I mean, I think, and you know, I had a conversation with Kevin when he got here about what it was like here and how different it would be from anything that he'd seen in Washington. And I said, the thing that you will not understand is the presumption of bad faith. That that no matter what you do, no matter what you say, there's a certain percentage of the population here, and it shifts depending on the issue. Who's in that percentage, who just assume that you're here for for nefarious reasons, and you won't be able to win them over with reason or fact. It's emotional, and I think he heard me when I said that. But again, it's one thing to hear someone say that to you. It's another thing to see it day after day after day after day. And he has over the last year. And I think he's adjusting. I think he's...
Has he learned to handle it enough that he's going to be able to accelerate and move through the process that he has to do now until September?
Well, I don't think it's gotten in his way at all. I mean, I think it's made things more rancorous than they had to be. He might have avoided some of the things that he said throughout the process if he'd been thinking more about that presumption of bad faith. But think how quickly we've moved through this process. I mean, we're almost at the point where we're talking about wrapping this up. We filed bankruptcy on June 1st last year?
July 18th.
So we're not even close to a year yet. Most cities that have gone through this process have not even come up with the certification that they could go into bankruptcy at this point. They're still fighting the creditors who are trying to keep them out of court. So,
all right. So the details are starting to get closer, and we're starting to get closer in the process. But Daniel, you wrote a column this week talking about the grand bargain and how now the time is really accelerating, and Orr needs to get this done in terms of saving the art and offsetting the pension cuts. How close are we? The foundations are still on board, but what is it going to take to close this deal?
Well, the foundations are very much on board. I think the real question hanging out there is what the state legislature is going to do. I mean, Kevyn Orr is essentially in a selling mode right now, saying we've got $815 million. You have to understand how unusual this is in a bankruptcy, that real fresh money comes into the process to essentially cushion the blow. And if we don't get this deal done, that money disappears. Well, the foundations are there. They've made their commitment, and that commitment, I think, is going to stay unless this thing ultimately falls apart. So really what this all hinges on is whether the governor and the Republican leadership in the legislature can deliver the $350 million. And if they can, then we may see this happen. The problem is the governor and the Republicans say they want to see the unions and the pension funds make a move, and the unions and the pension funds are not going to make a move until they know that full $815 million is going to be there. And oh, by the way, they need guarantees.
It sounds like a bad game of chicken, so who moves first?
I don't know, but what I do know is the legislature has got to move while it's in session.
yes.
So what we're being driven by is not so much the bankruptcy judge's calendar, which is also unspooling as this goes on, but really by the legislative calendar.
Legislator, yeah.
And whether they're going to be able to put that thing together. And I tell you what, if this thing falls apart and that legislative money goes away, I think you see the DIA benefactors move to the sidelines a little bit,
Yeah.
and the foundations will say, yeah, we raised $350-some million, but that's not going to be enough, and it's not going to happen, and the whole thing falls apart, and then people get a worse settlement, which is part of his argument.
So the governor said basically if this doesn't happen by May, is this what we're looking at, about the end of
Yeah.
May?
I've said for a while, Mackinac, right?
But by the time we hit the Mackinac Policy
By the time we get to
Conference,
the Mackinac Policy Conference, this governor has always made a point of having the budget wrapped up by that point, because after that, the legislature leaves for the summer, pretty much, and so I think that weekend. Or that week this year could be where you see all of this stuff sort of furiously
a lot of work
coming to a head. But at least
start writing, guys.
Everybody's together. I mean, I think that's one of this may be where the policy conference proves its value. You've got everybody up on an island. They can't.
They can't dodge
get
you,
off,
and there's no car that they can get into and drive away quickly.
And say, we got to get this hammered out.
Okay, real quick before we leave this topic, Kevyn Orr is also now looking for bids for privatizing, the water department, and he wants to keep it to only a 4% increase for how many years? Was it that
10?
he said for about?
I think it was about 10.
10 years. Is that a good enough? Is that a good deal?
Who knows? I mean, you know, the people in Oakland County think this is just a negotiating tactic to try and pressure them to the table, and I think in part it's probably true.
Yeah.
You know, Kevin does have a responsibility to try and extract some kind of value, but the problem he's going to run into here is you can't extract value from people that are already rate paying. And essentially saying, you know, we need you to be a revenue stream for the city of Detroit. That is politically a loser in
and that's
these counties.
that's the tragedy, right? I mean, it's the inability of people in the region to take responsibility for what is our water system, right? We all agree that this is not just an asset of the city of Detroit, but the access to that kind of fresh water and things like that is a regional asset. And the idea that we would even think about turning that over to even a private operator, let alone selling it, I just think is crazy.
Well, it may be ours, but the issue I think that they have is if you want to charge us $47 million a year for 40 years, put the $47 million into the capital improvements. Don't put it into the general fund.
But some of
those are two different things.
Right, but a lot of the money that would be generated by this deal would go into the capital improvements. There's a whole plan for fixing the system. But Detroit should get something for giving up an asset.
All right, moving forward, the debate over raising the minimum wage is picking up momentum. A recent Free Press poll says 65% in Michigan would support a $10.10 minimum wage, and that sets up a conflict for small business owners who say they'll lose money, have to cut employees, or go out of business if that happens. It's interesting, Stephen, because what you started off that saying the Democrats were looking at a couple of issues to put on the ballot that would get some interest. Well, they're really getting interest with minimum wage, and what some people are calling an election year ploy, you're getting a lot of traction on, and saying to the point, what 900,000 people, it would bring them out of the poverty level in the state of Michigan, but it would hurt business to the tune of 500,000.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing with the minimum wage is it's like any other discussion about how to put money in people's pockets, right? There's going to be a benefit to it, which is that some people are going to have more, and there's always a downside. I mean, that's the way economics work. I happen to think that there are other tools that you can use that have less of a downside than expanding the minimum wage. You know, expanding the earned income tax credit is historically the best and most efficient way to put more money in people's pockets without hurting business. But you know, also over the long term, the injury to business tends to leaven out. The minimum wage has been raised 8 times at the federal level since we had it. The economy has expanded every time it's been done over the long term. What happens is, you know, demand picks up and forces people, you know, to hire again because they need to up supply. So, you know, all of this is you know, focused on the short term and what will happen. I think not everyone's thinking about what's the long-term goal and how do we get there.
Daniel, do you think that there's a reality that this is going to happen in Michigan more than you thought, maybe even 5 months ago?
Well, I think it's a very good possibility, and I understand it's politically popular. I don't think it's economically necessarily wise, to Steve's point, but I wouldn't be surprised to see it happen. And then you let the chips fall. I mean, the reality is, you talk about the economy expanding. The economy has not expanded at any great rate for years. And we have been kind of in a slow growth mode for a very long time. You can blame all sorts of things. You can blame equity markets. You can blame Obamacare. You can blame, I mean, it goes on and on and on and on. But I think what it would be safe to say is that if you do raise the minimum wage, you run the risk of kind of pushing the unemployment rate in a different direction, of dampening small business hiring, and that's a reality. I think what this speaks to is the disconnect between the political world and the business world. And I'm always struck by the fact that politicians, when they see a politically popular issue, will go there and they totally become disconnected from how business, or as one of my good friends says, how money really works. Which is what we see with Obamacare. You know.
Well, but we've also seen that with Rick Snyder cutting the earned income tax credit, right? That's a wonderful tool that has over and over again shown that you can put more money in people's pockets without the negative financial impacts, and he goes and cuts it. Well, you know, I don't think that was such a good idea. That had nothing to do with economics.
All right. Well, as we head towards the end of the show, just about a minute or so left, I want to talk about 2 very important things, beer and baseball. Big news this week in Michigan, expansion of microbreweries here in the state of Michigan. The governor signed a couple of bills into law that will help expand that. We're already the fifth largest microbrewery state in the country. Big deal.
My sister lives in Denver and is a huge beer person, and she has nothing but good things to say about Michigan beer. And I'm like, really? I'm not really a beer guy.
Yeah, you're a wine guy.
I'm a wine guy, but
That's all right. We won't hold that against you, Daniel.
But there are some great breweries, and this is great, and I like to see them.
You know, it's spring and summer when Bell's Oberon is on
right.
tap.
I
That's
live,
all I have
I live
to
on
say.
the same block as a microbrewery, so I'm probably the biggest fan.
Do you have a pipeline in
here? I was going to say it just
There you go.
comes
Here
up
comes
out
Stephen
of,
again.
comes out of the tap in my house.
Yeah, and it's opening day coming up on Monday. Our hope for our Tigers springs eternal, right?
Oh man, it should be. But
There's some big holes this year, and I'm worried.
Do you think
about.
so? Do you
Shortstop is going to be a problem, and so everyone's going to hit the ball to the left side on us all year.
They'll fix it. They'll get it fixed. Brad Osmond, he's going to be the new thing.
That's what I said, Daniel. All right. Thanks so much to Daniel House for joining us tonight. In for Nolan, we appreciate it. And that is going to do it for My Week. Thanks for joining us. Check us out at MiWeek.org. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We welcome all of your comments. I'm Christy McDonald. Have a great night. We'll see you next week.
Business Leaders for Michigan is dedicated to making Michigan a top 10 state for jobs, personal income, and economic growth. Learn more at businessleadersformichigan.com. Funding is also provided by Delta.